Hello, I'm Bob Weir with another interview of candidates running for office in 2022. My guest today is Argyle resident Peyton Inge, who is running for the Republican nomination in the March 1st primary to the Texas House in District 65. Thank you for being here, Peyton.
Thank you, Bob.
Why don't we begin with telling people, what does a House member do? What's the role of a House member?
Well, we're the half of the legislative body for the state of Texas, which means we're responsible for passing the laws that determine the direction of this state. We also approve the budget. The Senate, of course, does their part. But we form those laws, we revise existing laws, and that is one of the primary reasons I'm running, and that in the past, so many times the legislative priorities that come out of the Republican Party, that we give them a list of priorities to do. Usually there's around 8. It seems like it's not the attention or the primary concern of our representatives. And as you and I were talking about earlier, this last session went into 2 additional extensions, because the grassroots finally said we've had enough, and that these priorities were not being addressed, and the reason that there were serious flaws. That we had some good things in them, there are some serious flaws that shouldn't have been there, and so I intend to try to be a constructive part of doing something a little better.
All right, Peyton, some of your biographical material as well as your campaign website is on the written portion of this interview.
Yes, sir.
Your website is www.texansforpeyton.com. Do you think requiring voters to show ID before they cast a ballot is difficult for them?
I don't see how that is. You can't do anything these days. You can't drive a car. There's so many places that you have to have photo identification. And I remember chuckling when I saw a few years ago at the Democrat convention, they've been very much against photo ID, but you could not get into their state convention without a photo ID. So it is part of our election. The integrity of that is critical, and you need to know that someone who's coming and wanting to shape the future of this state and this nation, that they have a legitimate interest in the right to do so, and that a photo identification is the best and the simplest way of doing that.
I agree. I mean, it seems to me that's a no-brainer. I don't know why it's so controversial. All right. Is there any way for Texas to stop illegal immigration at the border? I mean, can the governor close the border?
You'll end up cutting me off on this one, Bob. I just got back from a 4-city tour of the border, watching what's going on, and in short, it is a check-in process and then an untracked distribution across the U.S. While I was there, I pulled up a passport, a foreign passport that somebody had thrown in the river, as well as one other photo ID from someone. I tried to give them to the border agent in charge of this group of people that were sitting there, and the response is, "We don't need that, just put it in the trash." Literally, those were his words. And I asked further, well, these people show up usually with a supposedly Mexican government issued ID. There is no check really to see if it's valid or not. They just assume it's correct. And it's a long explanation for the rest of what I saw going on down there, and I'll have something by the next week on my website about it. But you truly have government-sanctioned, sponsored trafficking and untracked distribution around the U.S. of millions of people for political gain. And the problem is stopping it right now. I've heard a lot of people talking about how they're going to do it, but some of these things absolutely cannot be done. For example, part of the problem is that these people come across in established places, basically. In other words, all the fencing and the walls down there are not designed to keep people out. They're designed to funnel them to the collection points. And
it seems obvious to me that there's a movement in this country to change the demographics, right. just through the border. Recent story about the illegal immigrants being transported to Westchester County in New York, and the police some of the police over there were wondering themselves as they're at the airport seeing these people come in, and they're wondering and asking questions, what's going on? Nobody's telling us anything, So it's happening right in front of our eyes, and yet they're trying to hide it. But some of these things come out in news reports, but how many don't? You know,
Right,
you
and
have to
like I
make
said,
it-
I was there, and I watched the process, and it's a cat and mouse game between the people and the agents on the fan boats and the river and the crossings, and like I said, I don't think you can give me enough time to talk about today, but I will be talking about it at length on my website. But because I went and watched the full process from there to the processing center, though I wasn't allowed in it. I watched all the vans coming in, the buses coming out, then went to the NGO, which are the non-government organizations, which then process them, give them a few dollars, and send them on out. And the challenge is that the people who are receiving them on the shoreline are federal agents, they're border agents. They are not the state. And so if the state thinks they can just walk in there and seize what amounts to a federal prisoner or detainee and take them out of their hands, that isn't going to happen. So it is not as easily rectified as some people during the political era, while everybody's running for office and we have our bullet points. A lot of what people are saying cannot be done. So I heard someone say we're just going to lock down the entire border. Well, that would be worse than the lockdowns that we saw with the mandates, because so much of the economy of these cities depends upon people coming across legitimately and buying things, as well as we have an immense amount of produce and other goods that we buy from them. You can't just lock down the entire border.
Yeah.
So it is a very complicated situation. There are some things we can do about it to begin to disincentivize it, but like I said, there's some, and it's going to take some clever legislation to try to work around some of this stuff.
Well, yeah, it is a major problem. It does seem like the federal government is threatening states' rights, doing as they want to do it,
Right.
instead of enforcing the law. All right, let me move on to what about property owners in Texas? You think they're paying too much in taxes?
Yes, the level of the taxes is a serious threat to many people, particularly as the people who get retired. It's a challenge to, your income usually goes down in your latter years, and yet you don't have any kids in the school anymore, and so you're paying for something you're not using, and it can be very, very difficult and really threatening to ownership. And I will have by the end of next week my proposal for how to deal with that, both for your property taxes, your normal, as well as your ag exemption taxes. And again, these are some long-winded explanations, so they will be there for anyone to read how I propose to do that. But in short, you have two aspects. The big gorilla in your property tax bill is the school district. And under our Constitution, the state of Texas is required to provide free education to everyone here. And so they bill about half of what they spend on that, they get from the cities or the counties in that school ad valorem tax. It's a little over $30 billion a year. That, I believe, could be replaced instantaneously, that portion, with, say, a sales tax, or adjusting the current sales tax by some degree, or in another way, but that portion of the bill could be removed immediately. The part that will be, and then once the city collects those taxes, they can continue to distribute them as they are today on an equitable basis as they already are. The bigger problem is the taxes by the municipalities that cover their fire, police, and maybe the water district if they provide that. Not every community provides the same degree of services. And therefore, for the state to take all that and then try to distribute it would be a much bigger problem logistically, so that'll have to be dealt with differently.
How about the power grid problem that left so many people in a cold a year ago? Do you think Texas has solved it?
It has not, and it's going to get worse, because right now the security level for the state, our energy grid, we have maintained about a 15% margin of maximum capacity over maximum expected use. However, wind and solar, mostly wind, provide more than 25% of our total demand. So you can see that exceeds the margin of safety. If we go through a period of no wind, that's what happened last February.
Right.
All wind shut down, consumed the margin, and then when the other got hurt, it nearly tanked absolutely everything.
So there's certainly more work to be done on that.
Yes, and that, real quick, that energy expected in the next few years to go to 50%. So you can see we're guaranteed, if we don't do something, we are guaranteed of another February 2011 or summer equivalent. But that can be fixed, and I have a program for that as well.
Well, all right, we're coming to a close, so I'm just going to say, for those who want more answers to these questions, they can check your website again, www.texansforpeyton.com. I want to thank you, Peyton, for being here.
Thank
and
you.
Good luck in the election.
I appreciate it very much, Bob. Thank you, sir.
And thank you for watching.